Hey! Welcome to Sunny and Ratchet, your go-to spot for real talk and real laughs with your two favorite hosts who are spilling the tea, but not the wine.
Skies might be big, but the opinions are bigger. This is where you'll find your weekly dose of drama and magic, always served hot and slightly chaotic. I'm the one that likes to tell it like I see it.
And I'm the one who finds the silver lining, even if it's duct taped on.
We're just two women from the Midwest, one the ever optimist, and the other a realist, just trying to keep the train on the tracks.
So if you like gossip, world news, unsolicited advice, and good old-fashioned sarcasm, you're in the right spot.
Is this Sunny and Ratchet? Pull up a chair and let's get into it.
Sunny and Ratchet, we're here to chat. Big and small, we'll chew the fat. The good, the bad, the downright wild. Life uncensored, nothing mild. Every Friday, 6 on the dot. We're serving truth like it's piping hot. Hit that like, subscribe, and vibe. Join our crew, let's come alive.
Hey, I'm Sunny.
I'm Ratchet.
And we're here today to talk about
Generational curses. Everybody has it. Everybody has like drama and trauma that they have to deal with. And it's whether or not you're going to pass that on to your children or to the next generation that I feel like it becomes an issue. Well, it's an issue if you don't want to heal yourself anyway. But a generational curse is any kind of family trauma that is suppressed or duplicated when you're a parent, or am I making any sense here?
yeah, it's anything that doesn't just stick with the individual it happens to when those things pass on, those thoughts, those ideas that with those behaviors that come out of the trauma itself.
Yes, exactly that. And we have got counselor on set.
Hey. So, to understand a generational curse, it's really based around trauma, right? And we have different kinds of trauma. Somebody can experience an acute trauma, which just means there's one event, but that this event really impacted a person and causes a trauma response. It can be chronic trauma, meaning you're experiencing something over and over and over and over again. So like an acute would be a situation like maybe you experience a natural disaster once in your life and that resonates with you. Chronic trauma is something that you're exposed to over time. So like if you have a parent who has issues with some substance abuse, or you're in a relationship for a prolonged amount of time where you're experiencing trauma, that's chronic trauma. And then, when things happen, like as a child, you're developing and really forming your ideas and your values and your systems that carry you through life. So if that happens when you're a child, when you're young and you're experiencing different kinds of trauma as a child while you're developing, that's developmental trauma. So with that, you kind of look at those things and you look at these traumas, and has that carried over in the way that you raise your children or the younger generations in your family? Because sometimes we have people that are very involved in our lives and our upbringing who may not necessarily be the parent, but you can still pass on the trauma that way, right?
Yes.
So as we said, it's called either intergenerational or transgenerational trauma, and from what I've looked at, it it seems like those are interchangeable terms. And so with that, it doesn't stick with the individual. And that can be something that is, experienced by a race.
Yes.
You have Native Americans who had they had a race of people that came in, took over their land, told them how to live. That creates a lot of mistrust towards that. You have African American people who were brought over and forced into poverty and slavery, and the longer than not, they have been impoverished and taught to mistrust people that, they feel like they have a right to own them. And so even though we're in a different and better place in society, those things aren't gone.
They're not. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah. So, like, for example, with intergenerational trauma, you might have parents that have lived under oppression. And so they, pass on these survival messages, like don't trust, going to these people that are trying to help. Like, you consider, so Native Americans, right? The whole whitewashing, the people that should have helped them taught them to ignore their cultural beliefs and values and to live more like white people, right? And so generationally, they're getting these messages that, Western culture is not to be trusted. White people are not supposed to be trusted. And so then along comes, maybe better systems in place, like, maybe you have, more culturally aware counselors, but they're part of that white man system, that came in. And so there's just inherently this mistrust. And so now, although there may be people actively working and trying to help, they've learned generationally not to trust others and bring outsiders in to their, culture and world. And that even translates down to a small family, right? So they may not trust counselors. They may not trust police because they have experienced police brutality, because it was more common, like, let's say for Black people, police were called in to enforce things like arresting people that were doing a sit-in. And so, you learn that those people can't be trusted.
Oh, yeah.
And you pass that on. And even though it's probably not as common, and, for whatever reasons, because there are also, like, there are Black policemen now that, and they're not going to arrest people for a sit-in. But, these things that have happened through history create this mistrust, and then that's passed down. So those are just some different examples. Or, on a smaller scale, and I mean smaller, like it's not like a whole group of
populace.
People. Yes. But like within your family, if let's say you're raised in a very traditional Christian nationalist home, and women are taught a certain place and a certain behavior, certain roles in life, that is handed down. And then you kind of you receive those thoughts and ideals, and they can be very unhealthy. So that's kind of a look at intergenerational trauma. Another thing that I've been reading about more recently is the epigenetics,
which I just learned out from her.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I think that, the thing that excites me about this topic is that we're learning more about how this happens and we're learning how to break the cycle, right? So the idea with epigenetics is that we have DNA and cells and genes and all of that, right? That it's passed down biologically. And we also have environmental factors, right? It's a little bit of that nurture versus nature conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you might be passing down the genes for alcoholism, right? And so you're prone to it. However, our environmental factors and the things we do in our life can flip those switches on or off. It's there, but it doesn't necessarily have to express itself. Mm-hmm. It might, if and that's where I think, parenting really comes in, because we can really help our children by dealing with our trauma and not putting them into the same situations. However, if you don't receive that help as a child, it's actually not too late. You can still flip that switch on or off, but you have to seek help. You have to deal.
And this is where I definitely want to get into the fact that there is a difference between actually healing from your trauma and then dismissing it, burying it, pushing it down so far that you feel like you are healed. There's definitely a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And true. So I guess I will maybe use myself as an example. So, I mean, obviously I've said on this podcast before that I've had, trauma throughout my life, and trauma as a child. And I experienced abuse as a child, not from my parents, but, it was from a family member. And there was a lot of, some people questioned whether it happened or didn't happen. Some people just wanted it to not, that they wanted to keep it quiet and not talk about it and say the past is the past. And that was it wasn't healthy for me. It's not actually healthy for anyone. But, I think the silence is what, made me want to scream with my family,
Yeah.
So I'm not doing that with my son. He knows what happened. He knows when I'm having a bad day. He knows what I did to overcome it. I also had conversations with my family members. Have I blasted it on social media for like everyone to hear? No, not really. But I don't shy away from talking about what's happened to me when it has value, right? So I'm not living in my trauma, but I've gone to therapy. I've addressed it with my family members, and, I've made my son aware of what's happened and where this has all come from and why I am the way I am. Why, I actually had a rule growing up that the kids couldn't play together in their rooms with the doors closed. They had to be open, and they didn't really understand that. And I even had a spouse at one point that was like, well, they're noisy, and I'm like, but no, we're, no, because we need to know what's happening, with the kids, but they understand why. They understand because of what I've been through and that I'm trying to break the cycle, but I'm also not wallowing in the pain. I'm dealing with it, letting them know that this is why I'm moving forward this way. Truth be told, when it comes to my immediate family, and, I've had to go home and stuff, on the one hand, I really love my family.
Yep.
I love my parents. I love them. And there are a lot of things that are wonderful and positive. But them talking about this family member in a positive way, them, thinking that because this family member grew up to get married, have kids, have a job, hold down, appear to be a stable person, that somehow negated the things that this person did to me. That was painful. It would really take me back. I remember one time, they were talking about it, and I just, I started like just excusing myself from family functions or from the room when this would happen. Because I wasn't going to yell and scream about it, but I wasn't going to sit there. And I remember one time my mom coming up to talk to me, and like the only thing she wanted me to talk about it. And at the time I couldn't. And the only thing I could tell her is that, the only thing I can feel right now is pain. I feel pain. And I didn't scream at everybody, but I didn't lie about it. And, maybe I should have done more to be like, blow up in front of the family. I don't know, maybe, But, yeah, I didn't continue to shove it down. And I make sure my future generations know what happened, why I do what I do. And also, I think being able to, receive feedback, conversations with my son about, this is what happened. So this is why I do this. Do you understand? Do you think that's fair? What do you think about this? Is there a better way?
Which sounds really healthy, because we briefly talked about this. I went completely opposite. Like I still don't talk to my children about the traumas that I've endured. I haven't talked to them about my health issues. I don't talk to them about things that I feel like would be too upsetting for them. I don't want them to worry about me. I don't want them to feel like I'm a burden or a responsibility. And so I have kept them in the dark. But I also know that my traumas and my stressors and my triggers and stuff like that have come out with me parenting. So we have went completely different ways on this. And up until today, I thought I was good. I thought I was good. I thought I was doing a good parent move by keeping that drama to myself, because I didn't want them to have to carry that load.
Mm-hmm.
And you've definitely enlightened me to the point where it's not necessarily like a burden to them. It's just this is a wise situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry for my children. And thank you.
It's never too late. It's never too late to have those conversations.
Yeah.
Be easy on yourself. Trauma doesn't come with an instruction manual. We're all kind of figuring it out. So you may be asking yourself, well, okay, all this stuff has happened, but like, really, how do you change the cycle? And
good question.
Yes.
We all want to know.
Communication is key. Healthy communication, right? Not toxic communication, but healthy communication. So what that looks like is you're being honest about what happened, but you're also demonstrating that you're working through this to overcome, right? Not to live in it, but to overcome. You are open about what happened and you seek help. And help can look like therapy, but like you have mentioned before, that can be costly. And that's kind of another tangent of, what might be functionally wrong with our healthcare.
That's true.
But, speaking of the trauma, but speaking through it and speaking about how it will stop with you, right? And so not living, we are victims of things, but we can move past that from victim to overcomer. And that's what you want to move towards. So some things you can do is you can have conversations with your parents if that's an option. Now, I can tell you that I have been able to have conversations with my mother to move through it, but it's just never been something that I could work through with my father. It just wasn't. And
Do you think
so,
that's hindered your relationship?
well, of course it has, yeah. But I do love him. And so there are ways where I can meet him where he's at. But I think it's like knowing the depths of the relationship you can have with someone. Um, um, Another thing you can do is you can just like notice and be aware of those patterns. Reflect on, what am I doing that is a result of what has happened to me or what has happened to my family, right?
One of my examples for that is like, I don't know. I was never abducted ever. Like I don't know where this comes from, but I was so petrified of my children being hurt or taken from me that they weren't allowed outside sometimes. Like when my panic was really bad, we all had to stay inside.
Yeah.
They weren't allowed outside unless I was outside with them. They weren't allowed in the front yard or the backyard unless I was there. And they weren't allowed to sleep over. They weren't allowed. I mean, it was a pretty strict household in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but I thought I was being productive.
Yeah. Well, you were doing, you were in your mind trying to do what you needed to do to keep them safe. And I don't, I mean, there is not shame in that, but perhaps examining how to determine who you can trust and who you can't might have been a good coping mechanism.
You said that. My first thought is nobody.
That's not trust anybody. Exactly. So I mean, that's something you might, want to, and so maybe you can't work through it with your parents, or maybe you can't work through it with your kids, but you can work through it with counselors or friends. But I mean, you have to know your friends, right? You have to know when you're talking to your friends who's going to feed healing and who's going to feed more fear and trauma into that. And you kind of decide which way you want to go, right? What are you going to feed?
I feel like this episode is such a revelation because I think I'm more the friend who does more trauma. Do good.
That is not true.
I'm always like, who are we fighting today?
So level. Yes, but okay. So as you pointed out to me, I have trouble saying no to people. I'm a people pleaser.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes from the, really having certain things pushed and enforced into me about how to be a person, how to be a woman, how to be kind of a more submissive person.
Mm-hmm.
Because in my families, aside from my, black sheep grandma, who I sometimes really admire, there have been ideals, kind of pushed of how to behave, and you have helped me overcome that generational curse. Like there are times, that I have seen your help and your words help me stand up and speak up in situations that are hard for me. So
thank you.
Finding the friends that feed the healing you need,
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm not just a trauma maker.
You're not. You're not. There's that balance. There's that balance of speak up, but how can we do that in a healthy way?
And this is why you were my best friend. Because you were definitely, my counter to my rage.
Yeah, well, this is why you're my best friend too. You teach me to speak up more.
Oh my gosh. So other than like the counseling, the, finding those triggers and learning to cope with your trauma, when does that trauma become... I think this is why I haven't talked to my children, because that trauma for me has never not been healed. I feel like I'm healed from it, but it always rears its ugly head. Like it will always come back. Mm-hmm. And I hate the fact that, like, I'm starting to tear up now. Mm-hmm. I would hate the fact that my trauma is going to affect my children and how they see the world. Because I see the world exactly how I said it. I don't feel like my tribe is small for a reason. Mm-hmm. Because I trust little to no one. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want them to have that mindset that everybody was evil, but in my head everybody is evil. Like, there is nobody out there. I don't feel like anybody is out there, like, looking out for the good of the community or the good of, like, me as a child.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my job. I had to make sure that they were safe at all times. I knew where they were at all times. I had to make sure that, and I wasn't great at it. I can honestly tell you right now, like, I was a shit mom at times. I let my kids, I traumatized them in my own ways. And this is where this generational curse is so important to me, because I know for a fact I have, as much as I didn't want to, I did pass it along.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't sexually abused. They weren't beaten. They weren't dumped on strangers. They weren't, everything else. They weren't taken advantage like that, but they didn't know how my mood was going to be that day.
Mm-hmm.
So I am sure and positive that my kids had to learn how to walk on eggshells around me, which is one thing that I hated having to do with my mother. I hated that.
I don't know if you're hearing you say it, but you did have a lot of wins as a mother, but you feel like you could have done better.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Which is 100% of moms. There isn't a perfect mom out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
But did you do better than your mother?
Yes.
Okay. Progress, right? Progress.
Yes. And that's like, it takes generations to break these curses.
Yeah.
And so I feel like knowing that we have to be aware of it. Like, I'm not aware of everything. Like, even just starting this podcast with you, I've learned, like, oh shit, like, that was a fucked up decision I made. But when does that, I guess when that trauma, when does it become, instead of being a trauma or a trigger, when is it supposed to be just a piece of your past? Is that even a possibility?
So here's the way I saw this illustration, and it was so perfect to me. It illustrated trauma as like this ball inside a box.
Mm-hmm.
And at first that ball is really large. And there's like the trauma button in the box, and it just hits it all the time. But as you deal with the trauma, that ball shrinks down. It's still moving around and bouncing around in the box, but it doesn't hit the button as often. And the smaller it gets, the less it hits that button. And that button is when you get triggered, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it will never go away, I don't think, because I still, despite all my work, I have bad days. It was just 2 or 3 weeks ago, I woke up and, I just had to be honest with my husband. I was like, everything feels wrong, even though I know it's not. And I'm trying to get my head right today. And I think I had a dream that was pretty triggering. But that's not my everyday. It's not my every week. It's not my every month. It happens less and less. And I think that you need to own when that trigger button is hit.
Yeah.
And that's part of the healing. Because so for my husband, I haven't passed it down generationally to him, but I can be honest about this is where my head's at today, and I'm working on myself today. And then he can see that tomorrow I will wake up and I feel better. He'll see the progress and the healing happening. And I think that that's what we can do to really deal with and express our trauma in a healthy way.
Yeah.
And just so y'all know, I am not the perfect mom. At some point, I forget who, I think maybe I was talking to a therapist, and it was like, I have to accept that I am doing the best that I can, but I will not be perfect. And everybody's going to do something to their kid that requires the thing I might need a therapist for. So we should all have a phone and a therapy session. It is. We are not perfect people, but we do the best we can.
Yeah.
And we always work on doing better. Yes.
Yeah. So, what do you think if you feel comfortable, in your particular family, what is something that you feel has been a generational curse?
Okay. I feel like mental health
Mhm.
and pushing it away rather than dealing with it. I feel like that's a big generational curse. I also feel like pushing submissive female roles has been a curse. And so I know it speaks volumes in me, you know? I mean, people might be able to guess that. But, you know, I became so involved in healing that I ended up, you know, becoming a psychology major
Yeah.
and ended up becoming a school counselor to be able to intervene early and with a population of kids like you might, you know, think, well, wouldn't you want to become a child psychologist? But a lot of families don't reach out for help because they can't afford it, because there's stigmas to it. But when you're in school, you can see you can see kids day to day and be that person that without that serious hour-long therapy session, you can be that person that connects in their lives and helps them and helps connect families to resources and find people they trust. And it's kind of, I mean, that's my lifelong work.
I mean, it's definitely a calling for you. Like you care so much about these kids. I mean, so much so that they come home with you.
And now I'm a foster parent. But yes.
But I think that there needs to be, and this is totally off topic, but I feel like you are definitely in this like margin of, I wish more people, including me, were like, I feel like people like you who want to make a difference, I don't think that there are many of them out there. I think people would rather just take out their phones and record rather than stepping up and being part of the solution. So I admire that about you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. You know, I think that some things that give me hope, right? This is why things like having something like, you know, May being Mental Health Awareness Month, right? It gives a time of year to really draw attention to it, because if we go our day to day, we forget to have that focus. But when we have that focus and we really get it out there and we really talk about it, maybe people talk about it on their podcast, maybe they talk about it in schools, maybe it's something that's brought up in the news. The more we create those conversations, we're also bringing to light people that have changed their narrative and gotten help. And we're that example and that model. And other people who may have not spoken about it yet, but they see it, they start to receive those messages that it can be different. I really wish I had the exact statistic in my head, but I remember when I was at the YWCA, they talked about the number of times a woman in domestic violence usually needs to hear that there's help out there for her to finally leave. And I think the number was like something like 7 to 10 times. And that it, so like a woman who's in a situation of domestic violence,
Yeah.
the first time she's told there's options for you, you don't have to live in this, rarely does she leave. But the more she gets those messages, the more she continues to hear it, the more likely she is it's going to sit and resonate in her mind, and she's going to keep hearing this message of hope. And then that helps her to get out of the situation.
There is hope. Get out of your situation.
Yes.
There is
988.
211. Dear God, message us. Sunny and Ratchet at gmail.com. Just, there's hope.
I received medical treatment for my abuse, and it still took 2 times. 3 times to be told before I left. So
okay. I guess this is just something that I'm gonna have to just accept. I mean, I've always been a so for me, I can't ever claim a victim because I feel like every single time there's ever been a domestic dispute, I've either started it or have been a participant in it. So
But you don't have to be a victim.
I'm
You can
not
be an overcomer.
I am an overcomer. But like my husband cheats on me. I gave him a black eye. Stayed out all night with my kids because he was having an affair. And so yeah, so I don't even know what I'm trying to say right now.
What I hear is somebody who's actually giving voice to their trauma instead of hiding it. And I'm super proud of you.
Thank you. It's more like I hate the fact that there are men and women out there who are allowing their partners to totally degrade them and physically abuse them, and they can't see that there's hope, that they can't see that there's a way out.
It's that generational trauma because likely they've seen it happen and they've seen it stifled and they've been taught, keep it a secret, keep it a secret. We handle things within the family. And so it just continues and continues and continues. And it's not as simple as boy meets girl, boy punches girl, girl leaves. It's not as simple as that. It's not, it's there's so much that goes into it and so much that you've already learned. And you can even grow up in a situation and think that's never going to be me and still find yourself there. But then you're living in this shame that you don't want to admit that you ended up there because you've been taught, keep it silent, keep it secret. And that part still lives with you. And then you stay in it. It's so complex.
It is. It's way over my head of understanding. Like I can't grapple with it. It just, I don't know. So I thank you for getting out of that situation. Thank you for those people who were like, there's a better life out there for you. You can be safe.
That's one of those things that I tell myself too when I think about that statistic, when I think about somebody who's hurting and I try to give them a helpful advice and they don't take it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think a lot of people sometimes think, well, I'm just going to stop. I'm just going to stop even worrying about it because obviously they're not going to do what I say. Maybe they never will, but maybe you're that time that you'll say it and it'll resonate, and maybe you're just part of that ladder that's building up to get them out of it. So whether they take the advice or not, say it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Man, I was thinking about alcoholism.
Well,
I've always told my kids, like, I didn't drink until I was 25 because I didn't want to perpetuate the issues that we lived with. And so I remember, my kids, and I'd be like, you guys need to remember, like, alcoholism runs in our family. Like, you're Native and you're Irish. Like, be careful out there.
So my biological father was an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this like huge fear that, what if that becomes my story? Like, should I never drink? I don't know. And so, but I also was raised by parents who could drink in a healthy way.
Yeah.
And talk about it. And, so it was not a secret that my biological father was an alcoholic. It wasn't a secret the way that affected his life. It wasn't a secret that my parents drank alcohol. But there was a lot of talk about how to do it in a healthy way. So then, I'll be honest, my first time drinking was, with my parents.
Good.
Yeah. They're the ones that, I didn't do it till I was older. I was in college, wasn't quite 21, but, practicing good drinking habits with my parents who showed how to drink in a healthy way.
I like that. Okay.
Rather than saying, oh, alcoholism, it's bad, bad, bad. You can't have a drop because this runs in your family. I just was taught what healthy looks like.
what is healthy?
Hmm.
I think healthy is somebody who's just able to deal with the fucked up crap that life has thrown at you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you're not gonna, I don't know, because it could go one or two ways. It could be like, this is going to define my life for the rest of my life. It's going to be a point of animosity for me and mine, or it's going to be like, oh, that just happened. And so are you going to be just like nonchalant about it and just let people run over you? Or are you going to fight back? Or like, I feel like even just that, I mean,
So to me,
to you.
and this is, what I teach my kids, my kids that I, work with in groups. We talk about how, trauma happens to everybody, but the way you cope, is it messing you up or is it helping you? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you're abandoned as a child,
Mm-hmm.
right? Do you feel like you can't bond with people, like you're never going to trust anybody, like you just keep it all superficial? Because that's not healthy. Do you trust everybody you're coming across because you want so badly to be able to trust someone? That's not healthy.
Mm-mm.
Do you take the time to get to know someone? Do you keep your heart open but not falling on the floor? What do you do to find a middle ground? Or something, I guess, totally unrelated, but you feel like you didn't have certain things in your childhood that you were lacking, that you were neglected. Do you turn to alcohol and drugs to numb the pain? You don't want to numb the pain. You don't want to feel the pain so badly that you can't cope either. So what are you doing to address that hurt that's not something that's going to make life difficult or dangerous for you?
Yeah.
So I think that healthy means being able to choose healthy coping mechanisms. It doesn't mean the trauma didn't exist. It doesn't mean that you can't talk about it. It also doesn't mean you're telling the whole world your whole story. Unless that helps.
Balancing act. Oh my
Yes, it's balance. It's balance. The whole idea of Sunny and Ratchet. Balance.
It really is.
Yes.
Oh gosh. This went a lot deeper than I was expecting it.
Oh.
No, I love it. I do. I feel like a lot of people, I needed to hear some things, and it was my idea. So
there you go.
to keep it light,
Yes.
if you had to choose a song for your generational trauma issues, what would it be?
Well, the first one that comes to mind is Patsy Cline's Crazy.
I love that.
I mean, she has some pretty unhealthy relationships, romantic relationships based on love. So yeah.
We are so different.
Well, tell me yours.
The Animal I Have Become by Days Grace.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
I feel like it really edifies who I am based on my trauma, because it does affect who I am, and I can't change that. But I went from being a child who was just silent and scared to be seen or heard to now being an overzealous, loud, bitchy person.
Your story, I think of bullet hole with butterfly wings.
Oh my gosh, that's so sweet. I love that. I'm glad you like that. I'm like, oh, actually. So I guess to just condense it, like everything we've talked about is generational trauma is things that have happened in your life or your parents' life that has been passed down or it has at least affected you in some way, whether or not it's like me deciding I'm not going to burden my children with my issues, but still having my issues and then not understanding why. I'm so protective or so overwhelmed or so scared that I'm yelling now. Or I hate the fact that I lose my train of thought so often. So easy.
That's okay.
But yeah, it's just like, so you have this generational trauma and it affects the people around you. There are ways to cope with it, and obviously it's going to take, it's not an overnight cure, but it's just one step at a time, which again makes sense because everything that I have read and learned about with this is that it takes generations for it to be better. And even during those generations, like there could be other traumas that happen. And it's scary being a parent and having to deal with the world around you.
So in the show The Last of Us, I felt like I saw the perfect example of intergenerational trauma and healing. So the main character, there's a flashback and he has a dad who is an alcoholic and he's been disciplining his kids in a very unhealthy, aggressive way. And so the main character, kind of gets between him and
his brother.
Yeah. And, he's telling him, you're not going to do that anymore. And the dad kind of takes a moment, takes pause, thinks through it. And he's saying, you might not understand all the things that I do, but you'll be better than me. I hope you do a little bit better than me.
Yeah, I didn't hurt you as hard as my dad hurt me.
Yes.
Better than me.
Yes. Yeah. And then it gets to him and the girl he's taken in like a daughter. And she doesn't understand the choices he's made. And he's saying, well, you may not understand me, but I hope you do a little bit better than me.
I know, that broke my heart.
I know. I'm getting goosebumps. Getting goosebumps.
Them killing Joel off was the worst decision. I understand that it's already been done. Like it was a game, it was a comic, whatever. It was still horrible.
Spoiler alert. Sorry for any of you who have not finished the season, but also hurry up and catch up. It's been out forever now.
Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know. I feel like we all have a duty, not only as parents, but as a member of society, to try to better ourselves in a way to where we're not a burden and we're not going to continue to perpetuate all this negative. I mean, if you just look at the world around us, it's so crazy. Like we have homeless people on our streets, whether or not they're, really homeless or not. I know one of the arguments my husband and I have is he's like, they're just going to use it for drugs or alcohol. And I'm like, and?
How they need a little relief from this crazy world and maybe they need an escape.
But even if that's what they're doing, that's not my decision. It's once I hand that money off, it's no longer mine. It's not my decision to make with it. I've done my due diligence to try to help this person in that microscopic moment in their life. I'm one of 100 that day. Yeah. I make more money than I do sometimes.
It's okay. I mean, you can just love a person and just recognize their humanity,
yeah, we need to do that more as a society.
I think my call to society, what I would like to see improved is, I think that there's a lot of people that only see how things are today and they don't see what's brought people where they are. Like I was watching, what was the movie called? Black Klansman when it came out. It's about the guy who was the first black cop in 1970.
That's so sad.
Well, see, and I think about that. I think people don't understand. They're like, well, Black people are free now, so like they should be able to make just as much money as me. And it's not like that. Like generational wealth, it's a thing. Like if the first Black police officer was in 1970, and I don't know if that person's still alive or not, but
Even if they were,
they could be. Like that's talking about, the first point. Like there's a lot of firsts for Black people and the careers they've been able to have. And when you have like come over here, you didn't even come over here as a settler. You came over as a slave and literally owned nothing, not even your own body, for so long. They don't have the same opportunities for wealth that people.
That's what I say all the time.
Yes,
To people when they're like, I'm like,
because they're seeing the present. They're not seeing the past and understanding this person's generational journey and why it's different. Like
we all have a personal responsibility, though. I'm responsible for who I am. I'm responsible for my actions, no matter the trauma or the trials that I've had to endure. Like, I'm responsible for what I say, what comes out of my mouth, my actions. I'm responsible for those. So when we're talking about these generational traumas and everything like that, I just want to, we cannot, it's not, I hate when people say to me, I'm this way because my dad did XYZ. I'm this way because my mom did XYZ. I did that because this is what happened to me. I want to punch them in the face. I hate that. I hate that so much.
Because they're making a choice. Are they going to live in their trauma, or are they going to break the cycle?
But yes. But you have to be responsible for your actions as an adult.
It's the only way you can move on. It's the only way you can do better. Yeah.
So as much as we're like, I just wanted to make sure that was, I hate that. That is such a pet peeve of mine.
Well, I think that, so yes, I guess my statement towards the generational wealth or generational poverty is that that is something that was completely outside of their control.
100%.
Being, brought to this country, being forced to be destitute. I don't think that we can expect, like this idea of DEI going away. We talked about Roe versus Wade. That was only turned over 50 years ago. And now, we're heading backwards. We're taking those protections away. We're taking away DEI. Well, 50 years ago, over 50 years ago, but 55 years ago, right? First Black cop.
Yes. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, yes. Like we have people alive today that still could not get a job based on their gender or the color of their skin.
The woman who was the first woman who ever integrated into the school system in Georgia, I think it was, Mississippi. We did that, and I can't even remember. But she's still alive. She has an Instagram account. She's alive. She's here. And she was just the first Black student in a white school.
Yes, and it takes generations and generations. And if the people that are still alive, that saw these freedoms come about, they're still alive today, that trauma, it is still there needing to be dealt with.
Oh, yeah.
And I think we need to acknowledge that part of it. They still have to heal.
Yeah. I actually have a friend. She's actually Native and Black, but she does have that very crass way of speaking. Like, I think it sounds crass at times. Like, she's very blunt, very, and we were talking about it one day because we work at the same place and stuff, and she feels like she has to put on her work voice or whatever. She's not mean by any means. Like, she's just very blunt, very no nonsense. And that's just the way that she grew up. Like, I've heard her mother and her talk. I've heard the way she talks with her kids. It's not like it's a bad thing. It's just the way they talk. And it's their culture.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, she's always afraid because she's like, I don't know if that was too harsh. I don't know. And she'll tell me what was said. It's like, no, you're speaking, you had to say it this way because of XYZ. So if there's ever if there's ever an issue with like our manager in this situation, I hate that for her. I hate the fact that she feels like she has to put on a different voice coming from the culture she comes from.
I'm cracking up a little that she comes to Ratchet. Things are too Ratchet.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry.
I'm like, no, bitch, you're good.
They deserved it. Sorry.
No,
It's funny.
Well, I have to say thank you for this counseling session. Oh my God.
So I hope you all enjoyed that.
Right. Yes. This one was a little, I thought it was going to be more, I didn't think it was so intense. I didn't think it would be so intense, but it was. And I'm not sorry. So
don't be sorry. Yeah. Be authentic.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Here's to shouting into the void.
Shouting into the void. Okay. Need a hug.